Welcome to Daily Devotions. Today we are in Matthew chapter 5 with the most epic sermon ever preached, the Sermon on the Mount. And it starts with the Beatitudes. And so hopefully you've read the scripture already, and so we can jump into it. I want to focus on just one little part of it. I don't know if you're familiar, maybe even living under a rock, with Marie Kondo. Every day I go home and I find a different pair of pants rolled up and put into my dresser because my wife watched this Marie Kondo tidying up show on Netflix. And so it's really kind of a lesson in minimalism. And basically her whole thing is you look at something and you have to ask yourself, does this spark joy? And if it does not spark joy, you throw it out. You just toss it aside. Now, I was Marie Kondoing the heck out of my house before I even knew who Marie Kondo was, because I'm one of those compulsive people that just hates clutter. And so I'll just go through stuff and just start throwing it away. I'll find like a big box of cables that I don't think I'll ever have to use again. And so I'll throw it out. And then like 2 weeks later, I'll be like, man, where's that cable that I need? And then I'll have to go out and buy it again because I threw it out. And so I'm generally the kind of person that almost nothing sparks joy unless it makes sound for music, or maybe I can hold it and read it, or it's a device I can watch Netflix on. Otherwise, it doesn't spark joy to me. And I bring this all up because when we're reading the Beatitudes, there are 3 of them that pop out to me that seemingly look like the joyless items of the list. And so why don't we read actually through the Beatitudes here, and starting in verse 3, and then I'll touch on that a little bit. The Beatitudes, verse 3, God blesses those who are poor and realize their need for Him. Some versions say, blessed is the man that is poor and realizes their need for God. Now, when we break it down, blessed, another way of saying that would be happy is the man in the original Greek. So happy is the man who is poor. And you think, well, that's kind of weird, and realizes. And so we don't see being poor as something that we would make us happy. But the scriptures here say happy is the man that is poor and realizes their need for God, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Verse 4, God blesses those who mourn, for they will be comforted. I want to urge you not to throw out the joyless items when it comes to the Beatitudes. And I specifically want to hone in on one of them, and that is mourning. Mourning's not fun. And when we see the word mourning here, it's the strongest use of the word in the Greek. It's basically like the same kind of mourning that Jesus did in John chapter 11 when He wept over Lazarus. He wept bitterly, the scriptures say. He was deeply troubled inside. Is that kind of mourning. And the reason I think we can say happy is the man who mourns is because mourning brings us closer to the heart of God. In Isaiah 53, it says that He was a man of sorrows, acquainted with deepest grief. And if mourning brings us closer to the heart of God and brings us closer to God, into the presence of God, we know that in Psalm 16 it says, in His presence there is fullness of joy, and at His right hand pleasures forevermore. So happy is the man who mourns because it brings us closer to God's heart, and in doing so brings us closer to the presence of the Lord, which in His presence there is fullness of joy. And if happiness is a response to something that is happening to you, joy is a response to something that is welling up inside of you. And so, blessed is the man who mourns. Don't throw out the joyless items like Marie Kondo would have you do when it comes to the Beatitudes. And so, I love you guys, and I will see you tomorrow for Matthew chapter 6.